Chapter 5. The day had been unusually heavy. I had more or less continuous work till 3 in the afternoon. And at 3, when I was looking at the clock, hoping to drop things and go home, I received a note from Gajapathy to say that I was to take 4th honors class, because George of the language section was absent. Some teachers were absent this week, exhausting their leave, and those who were present were saddled with extra work. I implored Gajapathy to spare me this pain, since as a student I had found language a torture, and as a teacher I still found it a torture. But he said, just keep the boys engaged.
The principal doesn't want to let the boys off when they have not a teacher for a particular period. In the English department, everybody ought to be able to handle any part of it, and I agree with him. And I had no option but to sit down in the 4th honors class and engage their young minds in tittle-tattle for an hour. Our chief believed in keeping them well, read, and when they had spare time, in spending it over a library book of some consequence. I sent a boy to the library to fetch any book from the English section he liked. He brought down a book of 19th century essays, and I sat down to read mechanically through the pages aloud. The boys were busy, with a lot of conversation among themselves. In harmony with this din I read on. Some boys in the front listened. But they found it difficult to hear and complained, "Can't hear, sir."
Ask your friends to shut up and you will hear better, I said. They turned and stared helplessly at the noise makers behind them. It was a small class and I could have easily established law and order, but I was too weary to exert myself. I was past that stage of exertion. A terrible fatigue and inertia had come over me these days, and it seemed to me all the same whether they listened or made a noise, or whether they understood what I said or felt baffled, or even whether they heard it at all or not. My business was to sit in that chair and keep my tongue active. That I did. My mind itself could only vaguely comprehend what was being read. This influence became so marked towards the later part of the century that those writers seized on it with avidity.
It was a new, found treasure for the literary craftsman, a new weapon for his arsenal, shall we say? My voice dully fell on my ears, but my mind refused to maintain pace with its sense. I caught myself constantly reflecting, what is it all about? What influence? On whom? Oh, good author, why not say arsenal or whatever you like if you choose? Into this pandemonium the most welcome sound impinged the college bell. It was the end of the hour and of the day. I felt like a schoolboy, genuinely happy that I could go home now to the child waiting for me there, all ready and bubbling with joy, ready to be taken out and ready with 100 questions on her lips. I made my way into the common room, to put away the books in my locker, pick up my umbrella, and go out. As I was closing my locker, the servant came up and said, "There is someone asking for you, master." I looked out. He was a stranger, a young boy about 15 years old.
He was standing on the path below the veranda, a thin young man with a tuft behind, and wearing a small cap, a poor boy, I felt, by the look of him, out to ask for a donation for his school fee or something of the kind. Father seriously ill, money for his medicines. One or other of the numerous sad excuses for begging. Of late they were on the increase. Formerly I used to investigate and preach to them and so on, but now I felt too weary to exert myself and paid out change as far as possible. I saw his hand, bringing out an envelope, and I put my hand in my pocket for my purse. The usual typewritten petition addressed to all whom it may concern, I said to myself. What is it? I asked.
Are you Krishna of the English section? Yes. Here is a letter for you.
From whom? My father has sent it. Who is your father?
You'll find it all in that letter, he replied. It was a bulky envelope. I tore it open. There was a long sheet of paper, wrapped around which was a small note on which was written, "Dear Sir, I received this message last evening, while I was busy writing something else. I didn't understand what it meant. But the directions, address and name given in it are clear, and so I have set my son to find out if the address and name are of a real person, and to deliver it. If this letter reaches you, that is, if you are a real person, please read it, and if it means anything to you, keep it. Otherwise, you may just tear it up and throw it away, and forgive this intrusion.
He had given his name and address. I opened the other large sheet. The handwriting on it seemed to be different. It began, "This is a message for Krishna from his wife Sushila, who recently passed over. She has been seeking all these months some means of expressing herself to her husband, but the opportunity has occurred only today, when she found the present gentleman a very suitable medium of expression. Through him she is happy to communicate. She wants her husband to know that she is quite happy in another region, and wants him also to eradicate the grief in his mind. We are nearer each other than you understand. And I'm always watching him and the child." It was very baffling. I stared at the boy. I made nothing of it. "Boy, what is this?" "I don't know, sir. My father has been trying to send that for a week and could do it only today. I was searching everywhere, and I couldn't get away from my class."
"Oh, stop all that, boy. Why has your father sent this letter to me?" "I don't know, sir." I stood there and read it again and again, and as my head cooled, I was seized with elation. "Take me to your house," I cried.
"It's far off, sir. In the village Thiur. It was on the other side of the river, a couple of miles off." "No matter, I will come with you. What is your father?" "He looks after his garden and lands in the village, sir. I read in the board high school. I had leave today in the last period and so could bring you this letter."
Good boy, take me to your father." I walked beside him. The child would be waiting at home. "1 minute, will you come with me to my house? I will give you coffee and sweets. We will go." No, sir. I have to go away soon. I have to do some work at. I tried to persuade him. But he was adamant. So was I. Finally, we agreed upon a compromise. He gave me directions to reach his house. He'd go ahead and wait for me at the crossing and take me to his place. As I saw him go off towards the river, a sudden fear and doubt seized me. Suppose I should never meet him again. It was a horrible thought. "Boy," I had to beg him, "are you sure to wait?" Yes. I will stand on the trunk road."
"If you will wait here a moment, I'll run home, get back and join you," I said. If it had been any work other than seeing the child. The boy said, "I will wait for you at the trunk road positively, even if you are very late." Good boy, I cried and raced home. The child was dressed and ready, waiting for me at the door. As we left the kitchen and came to the hall, I told her, "Today the little dear will go out with Granny because father has to go out on business." She remained thoughtful and asked, "What business? Have you to go to college again?" "No. I've to go and see someone, very important business."
"When will you come back?" "As usual. But if you feel sleepy before I come, you just sleep." "I won't do that," she replied. "I will go with Granny. She has promised to show me a small doll's house which has electric light. Won't you buy one for me?"
"Well, see it first, we will buy it later." "Buy me a small house this size," she showed me her thumbnail size, with dolls so small. "Where can you buy it?"
The old lady answered, "It is not for sale. It is a small house kept in that medicine shop for decoration." I remembered seeing a small plywood doll's house kept in a small medicine seller's shopfront. He sold some home-made pills. It was more or less a quack shop which gave medicine under no known system, but the shop was always crowded. In the center of his shop he had mounted on a stand a plywood house with electric light. It was hard to understand what purpose it served there. But perhaps its real purpose was to interest a person like Leela. I put on a shirt and an upper cloth and rushed out along Elaman Street, down river, crossing at Nalapa's Grove. As I passed it, I could not help looking at the southern wall of the cremation ground far off. Smoke was climbing over its walls. Jingling bullock, carts, talkative villagers returning home from the town, and a miscellaneous crowd on the dusty path leading to the Tayur road on the other side. The sun inclined to the west. If I did not reach the crossroad before dusk, I'd never be able to spot the boy. I almost ran up the road, and I reached the crossroad, where the boy had promised to wait for me.
There I was. The west was ablaze with the sun below the horizon. Dusk would soon fall on us. But there was no sign of the boy. Boy, boy, I cried, not having asked him his name. Birds twittered on the trees, passers-by moved about, and my voice cried to the evening, boy, boy. What a fool I was not to have asked his name or precise directions. Boy, boy, I shouted like a madman, and passers-by looked at me curiously. I searched about frantically, and in the end saw the fellow coming up a path across the fields. Sorry to be late. Excuse me, sir. Good boy, I cried. You are very kind to come. I liked him. I said to myself that I would do him all the kindness possible when he came my way again. He would get a lot of marks from me when he came to college. I asked him about his school, books, teachers, and all sorts of other things as we walked on.
That's our house. He pointed at the sloping tiles visible through the dense cluster of trees. A mongrel came and jumped at the boy. Oh, keep quiet, Tiger. Go and tell father that a gentleman has come to see him. Tiger listened with his head tilted, and at the mention of father bounced off in the direction of the house, vaulting over the gate of thorns and brambles. By the time we reached the gate, it was opened from the other side, and a chubby and cheerful-looking person came towards me extending his hands. He had such good cheer in his face that it melted all the strangeness of the situation. He gripped my hand and said, "You must forgive the trouble I have given you. You must have thought it was a call from a lunatic asylum." He laughed. "Oh, not at all, not at all," I muttered idiotically. I was too confused. My feelings were all in a mess. I didn't know whether I was happy or unhappy. I was excited and muddled. He said, "You see, I would have searched you out, but it seemed too wild, and I thought it was all a fool's errand." I was most surprised to hear there was such a person. "I hope you are the person."
I'm the person, name, initials, and address, and in regard to the other things. Have you known my name before? Good God, no. You mustn't think so. I sent the letter as a test with the boy. I sent it out just as I got it, including the address. I sent it out with the boy, and you could have blown me over with a breath, in spite of my size, when the boy came and told me that he had delivered the letter. I thought the boy was playing a practical joke, but he said you were coming. Are you sure you are yourself? He asked with a rich, quiet laugh. It'd be wrong to say that he laughed. He hardly made any special sound or noise, but it was there all the time, a permanent background against which all his speech and gestures occurred, something like the melody of a veena string from which music arises and ends. Come in, we have a lot of things to say to each other, he said, and took me in through his small gate.
The dog followed. He patted its back and said, "Nice animal, isn't it? I'm very fond of him." I don't much fancy the sentimental cynicism of some dog lovers who say that they prefer dog to man. It's nonsense. A dog is a nice fellow to have around. Though an animate creature, when you don't like him you can put him away, out of sight and hearing. He will obey you cheerfully. He never talks back. I looked about. It looked like a green haven. Acres and acres of trees, shrubs and orchards. Far off, Casveriana leaves murmured. Beyond that Casveriana, would you believe it, I have a lotus pond, and on its bank a temple, the most lovely ruin that you ever saw. I was in ecstasy when I found that these delightful things were included in the lot. I'd love to see that temple. What temple is it?
The goddess. It is said that Sankara, when he passed this way, built it at night, by merely chanting her name over the earth, and it stood up, because the villagers hereabouts asked for it. The goddess is known as Vakmatha, the mother who came out of a syllable. Would you like to see it? But first rest and refreshment and then the other things of life. This has always been my motto. Shall we sit down here? We sat down on a stone bench under a spreading mango tree. He pointed at the cottage and said, "You must also come in and see my home. I have a little library too. Here comes my wife." He introduced me to her as the unknown man for whom a letter was sent. She looked at me and said, "We wouldn't believe you really existed." I thought it was some joke of my husband's. "Won't you have some coffee and fruits?" She went in and brought a tray, load of good things.
My host ate heartily, talking all the time. He told me numerous things about himself and the farm. How he purchased these acres 8 years ago and had worked on them night and day. He liked the pond, the temple and the trees. He wanted to be out of town, but near enough to be able to run into it. My views have always been that it must be a quiet retreat, but a railway line must be visible from your veranda or at least a trunk road. Now we've both. If you sit here for a while longer, you will see the Madras mail passing over that ridge. I came here, so near the town, but for 8 years I've hardly moved out of this estate. I'm quite happy where I am. By the way, my wife thinks if I moved up and down a little more into the town, I could occupy less space in my house. As if going were a sort of slimming exercise. I listened to it all with only partial interest. I was very anxious to hear more about that letter and other matters connected with it.
Shall we go round and see things? He fetched 2 staves from a cluster string on the fork of the mango tree, and gave one to me. He explained, "When an odd twig catches my eye, I cut it off and make a stick." Tree twigs have a sense of humor and adopt funny shapes. I think it is one of nature's expressions of humor. If only we can see them that way. He pointed at his collection. Crooked, picked, stunted, awry, all shapes and kinds were there. It is better to carry a staff. There are a lot of cobras about. Though I've never killed one in my life. When I see a snake, I usually cry for help. We wandered about the garden. He spoke incessantly, bursting with mirth, and explaining his garden. All the time he was talking, my mind was elsewhere, in a hopeless tension, waiting to hear about the letter. I hoped he would open the subject himself. But he spoke on about all sorts of other things. I tried once or twice to ask him but checked myself and remained quiet. Somehow, I felt too shy to open the topic like a newly-wed blushing at the mention of his wife.
It was nearly dark when we came to the northern edge of the estate. It was ineffably lovely, a small pond with blue lotus, a row of stone steps leading down to the water. Tall casveriana trees swayed and murmured over the banks. A crescent moon peeped behind the foliage. On the bank on our side stood a small shrine, its concrete walls green with age, and its little dome showing cracks. It had a small portal, and a flagstaff at the entrance. There was a small platform on the threshold of the temple. The temple was locked. We washed our feet and sat on the platform. It appeared an enchanting place. We squatted on the platform. "Shall I have the temple opened?" he asked. "No, don't worry about it now," I said.
There is an old priest who occasionally comes here once a month or so. A very fine man, with whom it is a pleasure to talk. A very learned man. I am really afraid of him. He is too good for this place, but comes here only out of piety, and he is running some charity institution in the town. He treats this as an opportunity to worship the goddess. He talked. I listened to him in silence. My mind was trembling with eagerness. I listened in tense silence. He asked with a smile, "You think I'm a bore?" "Oh, no. Doubtless, you want to know all about that letter."
"Of course I'm very eager," I said, and added with a pathetic foolishness, "It was so long ago." I stopped abruptly, not knowing how to finish the sentence. "Now listen," he said, "of late I have got into the habit of spending more and more of my evenings all alone here on this pure This Casveriana and the setting sun and the river create a sort of peace to which I've become more and more addicted. I spend long hours here, and desire nothing better than to be left here to this peace. It gives one the feeling that it is a place which belongs to eternity, and that it will not be touched by time or disease or decay. One day before starting for this place, I felt a great urge to bring writing materials with me. Since the morning it had hung on my mind. I felt that an old sin of my undergraduate days of writing prose, poems was returning, but there was no harm in succumbing to it. I slipped a pad and a pencil into my pocket when I started out in the evening on my rounds. I sat down on this pure with the pencil and pad. For some time I could write nothing. It seemed that 100 ideas were clamoring to express themselves, crowding into my head. It was a lovely sky. I felt I must write something of this great beauty in my lines. Let me assure you that I'm by no means a poetical, minded fellow. I'm a dead sober farmer, but what was this thing within? I felt a queer change taking place within me.
It was dusk when I sat down with the pad and pencil. Before the light should be fully gone, I wanted to write down my verse or drama or whatever it was that was troubling me. I poised the pencil over the paper. Presently the pencil moved. I was struck with the ease with which it moved. I was pleased. All the function my fingers had was to hold the pencil, nothing more. Thank you, began the page. Here we are, a band of spirits who've been working to bridge the gulf between life and after life. We have been looking about for a medium through whom we could communicate. There is hardly any personality on earth who does not obstruct our effort. But we are glad we've found you. Please, help us, by literally lending us a hand, your hand, and we will do the rest. I replied, I'm honored, I will do whatever I can. You need do nothing more than sit here 1 or 2 evenings of the week, relax your mind, and think of us. The pleasure is mine, I said. And then my hand wrote, here is Sushila, wife of Krishna, but as yet she is unable to communicate by herself. But by and by she will be an adept in it. Will you kindly send the following as coming from her to her husband? And then I received the message I sent you, and they also gave me your name and address.
Our next meeting was a week later, on the following Wednesday. He brought with him a pad of paper, and a couple of pencils, and a pencil sharpener. I don't want to risk a broken pencil, he remarked. There must be no complaint of any omission on my part, he explained. The Casveriana looked more enchanting than ever. Purple lotus bloomed on the pond surface. Gentle ripples splashed against the bank. The murmur of the Casveriana provided the music for the great occasion. We took our seats on the pure of the little shrine. My friend shut his eyes and prayed, Great souls, here we are. You have vouchsafed to us a vision for peace and understanding. Here we are ready to serve in the cause of illumination. He sat with his eyes shut, and as the dusk gathered around us, utter silence reigned. I too sat, not knowing what we waited for. The Casveriana murmured and hushed, the ripples splashed on the shore. A bright star appeared in the sky. I almost held my breath as I waited. There was such a peace in the air that I felt that even if nothing happened, this was a rich experience, a glimpse of eternal peace. We sat in silence, not speaking a word to each other.
I felt we could spend the rest of our life sitting there thus. He poised his pencil over the pad and waited. Suddenly the pencil began to move. Letters appeared on the paper. The pencil quivered as if with life. It moved at a terrific speed across the paper. It looked as though my friend could not hold it in check. It scratched the paper and tore the lines up into shreds and came through. The scratching it made drowned all other sounds. It seemed to be possessed of tremendous power. My friend said with a smile, I think my wrist will be dislocated at this rate, unless I have my wits about me. Sheet after sheet was covered thus with scribbling, hardly clear or legible, not a word of it could be deciphered. It looked like the work of a very young child with paper and pencil. By the light of a lantern he tried to make it out and burst into a laugh. This writing does me no credit. If I leave it behind, it will be a headache for future epigraphists. He looked at it again and again and laughed very happily. I remember that for writing precisely this sort of thing, my teacher broke my knuckles once.
He put it away. After a few minutes' interval, he took his pencil to the paper again. His hand wrote, "We are here, trying to express ourselves. Sorry if you find our force too much for you. It is because you are not accustomed to this pressure. Please steady yourself and slow down. You will have better results." "I have the feeling of a crow flying in a storm," my friend muttered to me. "But I suppose I must control myself. I am fat enough." He gripped the pencil as in a vice and steadied himself. No, his hand wrote, "You must relax, you must not set your teeth and get down to it so resolutely." His hand wrote, "Relax, slow down, control yourself, even if you feel like rushing off."
Rather a difficult combination of things. This relaxed control. Till this moment I never imagined such a combination existed, he muttered. He put away the pencil for a minute, stretched his arm, cracked his fingers and picked up the pencil again and turned over a clean sheet of paper. He said, "Great souls, I'm ready." Scrawled up sheets of paper lay on one side. "This is better. Go on slowly. Check yourself whenever you feel like running on fast. You will get good results." His hand steadied, his handwriting improved. The blank sheet was filling up. Letters and words danced their way into existence. "We are sorry to put you to this trouble. But please understand that this work may revolutionize human ideas, and that you are playing a vital part in it. This is an attempt to turn the other side of the medal of existence, which is called death. Please go on for just half an hour today and then stop, or if there are unfinished messages, a maximum of 40 minutes. And don't attempt it again for a week more, that is, exactly the same hour, next week this day. We have to warn you that it will take some more sittings before your friend here gets accurate results, but for a start what you are going to receive today will be quite good. Now put away your pencil and then start after 5 minutes.
Your nerves are too much in a tremble, and they must subside." My friend put away the pencil and said to me, "Are you happy? The next batch of messages may be from your wife." "I don't know how to thank you," I said. We watched the stars on their course for a few minutes, and gazed idly at the pond. 5 minutes passed. He picked up his pencil and placed it over the paper. "Your condition is better. Remember our instructions. Stop in half an hour." "I will remember," he replied and asked aloud, "Is my friend's wife here?" "Yes. She is here," his hand wrote, and the words covered half a page. My friend exercised control over his fingers, checked, and presently the writing assumed normal form. His hand wrote, "Your friend's wife has been here all along. In fact, we are at this task mainly for her sake. She is so eager to communicate with her husband." I looked about. The semi-dark air seemed to glisten with radiant presences like myriad dewdrops sparkling on the grass on a sunny morning. I strained my eyes and mind to catch a glimpse of these presences.
I told my friend, "Please ask if my wife will be able to communicate now directly." In answer his hand wrote, "She is very much excited and she is also not able to collect her thoughts easily. At the moment, she finds it easier to tell us." I visualized her all tremble with excitement as on that day when I went to her place to see and approve the future bride. As I waited in the hall, I caught a glimpse of her in another room through a looking glass, agitated and trembling. I had never again seen her so excited. There fell a pause, as my friend's pencil waited. There did not seem to be any need to ask or answer. This was enough. The greatest abiding rapture which could always stay, and not recede or fall into an anti-climax like most mortal joys. After a few moments, I asked, "Do you remember the name of our child?" The pencil wrote, "Yes, Radha." This was disappointing. My child was Leela. I was seized with a hopeless feeling of disappointment. To be unable to recollect the name of the child. What was wrong? Where? My mind buzzed with questions. The lady is smiling at the agitation which this name is causing her husband, but assures him that he need not feel so miserable over it.
We've warned you that results will not be very accurate today. There are difficulties. We will do our best and gradually all these handicaps will be removed. Meanwhile, understand that this is as good as it can be. I asked, but our child's name? Could this ever escape your mind? No. It can't and it has not. You commit the mistake of thinking that she is responsible for giving that name. As a matter of fact, it is a piece of your friend's own mind. You see, there are particular difficulties in regard to proper names. We try to get through a particular name, for instance your daughter's, but since we use the mechanism of your friend's writing, more often than not his mind interferes, bringing up its own selections.
This is how you got Radha now. But how is this difficulty to be surmounted? I asked. Is there no hope at all? I asked. Yes, by and by. Even now you may remember we could get through your name and address the other day and he was able to send for you. But it was an exception. He was ideally unself-conscious and his mind was very passive. It will all depend upon our friend's ability to remain passive and keep his own thoughts out of the field. That's why we have asked him to stop half an hour, which is the maximum time he can hold his ideas in the background. My friend said, "No. I can manage a little longer." "No. Half an hour will do. But by and by you may go on even longer. Please stop after this." The lady wants to say that she is as deeply devoted to her husband and child and the family as ever. She watches over them and prays for their welfare, only she is able to see things far more clearly than when she was on earth, although you are not aware of my presence at times. God's blessing be upon you and the child. The pencil ceased. My friend looked at me as if to say, "Go on. Get up. It is over." But I was reluctant. So many questions to ask. My heart choked with the questions still unasked. "Just a second more," I pleaded. "I have just one more question." I paused. It was not clear to me what the question was. I pondered. "Can't we have it sooner than next week? Please. Does she remember?" It was no use. The pencil stood unmoving. We waited for a moment. And then my friend said, "They are gone. We will try again next week."
On the following week we sat there just at the same hour, with the dusk falling about us. They wrote, "We are here. Conditions are favorable. But remember our instructions and go slowly. Sushila, wife of Krishna, is here and will now go on by herself. I have watched you since we met last and seen your mind. I saw the doubts crossing and recrossing your mind regarding identity. Naturally. How can you believe what you can't see? It might be me or someone else. Was that not the line of thought going on in your mind? Correct me if I am wrong." "You are right, absolutely right," I answered. It did not require much self-scrutiny to see it. And so I decided to clear this doubt first. And all this interval I have been trying to master the art of communication, and our helpers here have been very good to teach me. This is the first step. I hope you like this. I hope I do well for a start."
Very well, for a start," I replied in Tamil. I had not learnt very grammatical Tamil in my days, and if there are any mistakes, don't laugh at me. "Oh, you are very good. You wrote beautiful letters," I said.
"And yet you have destroyed every one of them," she said. "You found it possible to destroy every one of them," she repeated. I was startled. No one knew about it. In the secrecy of night, on that day her condition was declared to be hopeless. I sat in my room, bolted the door, took out of my drawer several bundles of letters she had written to me, tore them up into minute bits and burned them, and I also did the same with a few diary pages I had kept in the first years of our married life. I remembered saying to myself, gritting my teeth, "Let life do its worst, this is my answer. Every shred of memory will be destroyed, I will avoid torment thus." "How have you come to know of it?" I asked. By watching your mind. I saw you yesterday as you pulled out your table drawer and reflected. I might not have known it at all if you hadn't reflected on it every day. For on the occasion you were performing the deed, I was, you remember, passing over, and in that transition stage one is not aware of things.
It takes some time before we are able to know things. You have destroyed not only all that I wrote, but also all the letters you wrote to me. Was that the reason why you demanded them back from me every time I came back to you from my parents? It was an unwritten law existing between us. Whenever we were parted, we wrote to each other on alternate days, and when we met again, I took back from her all the letters, bundled them up, and offered to destroy them, but she always protested and I just kept them with me. Why did you do it? She persisted. I am very sorry. I thought I might abolish memory.
Have you been able to forget? Wasn't it childish to work your temper on those letters? It seemed that memory would torment me. That's how it may appear at first sight, but later, let me tell you that you will have a desire to be surrounded by everything belonging to the departed. Just a turn of the wheel. A man takes to drink to forget sad thoughts, but after a while they return with gathered force. I understand your feelings but can only laugh at the remedy. I felt really like a child who had misbehaved. Please forgive me if I appear to be speaking more than I ought. But I felt very unhappy about it. So I hope you will forgive this outburst, she said.
You are perfectly right, and entitled to it, I said. God bless you. I felt so vacant yesterday, when I had a longing to see your handwriting and could not find a single letter anywhere, I confessed. The lady is laughing, the helpers said. She is shaking with laughter. She says don't take anything too tragically, not even this. I accept your advice, I said.
You need not be unduly docile, she said, and strain yourself to be agreeable, just because I am speaking from this side. Don't hesitate to correct me if I appear silly. Oh, no, you are very sensible, I said. You used to be so considerate on the first 2 days whenever we met after a visit to my parents. You would not contradict anything I said. Here is a piece of news for you. There are about 14 letters which have been spared. I don't remember whether they were yours or mine, but I remember tying them up in a bundle. You will find them either in my trunk, or in one of the boxes in my father's place.
I thought over this and said, I am afraid you are wrong. There is not one letter left. I destroyed every bit that we wrote to each other. I am sure of these 14. I remember the number precisely. I counted them, I tied them up and did not give them to you because you were very busy with something or other. I can't say how long ago. I put them away and then I remember coming across the bundle again and again. What I can't recollect is whether it was in my father's house or in ours. I am certain that the letters are there. She insisted, will you please make a thorough search once again, and if you find them please don't repeat your previous act? No, I will be very careful, I said.
Also, I want you to keep for my sake a sandalwood casket. I have put into it all my knacks. I cast my mind about. I had looked through all her possessions and I had a knowledge of everything she had. I don't think you ever had such a box, I said. Where is it? It is not a very big box, about 8 or 10 inches long, 3 inches high and about 4 inches wide. The lid of the box is not flat but slightly elevated. I kept all my knacks in it. It was given to me by my mother-in-law. Box of ivory and sandalwood. Please find it and keep it. I was fond of it. You may throw away all my other things. They are of no particular value to me.
I can't throw out the tiniest speck that belonged to you. I will keep everything, including this box if I find it. But I am not sure there is such a box. At the next meeting she remarked, you fret too much about the child. Have no kind of worry about her. When you are away at college, you hardly do your work with a free mind, all the time saying to yourself, what is Leela doing? What is she doing? Remember that she is perfectly happy all the afternoon. playing with that friend of hers in the next house, and listening to the stories of the old lady. Just about the time you return, she stands at the door and looks down the street for you. And when you see her, you think that she has been there the whole day and feel miserable about it. How you can help it, you never pause to consider. Do you know that she sometimes insists upon being taken to the little children's school, which is nearby? And the old lady, whenever she is free, takes her there, and she has become quite a favorite there. Why don't you put her in that school? She will be quite happy there.
Immediately I contradicted, I don't think she is going to a school. She would have told me about it. She went in casually once or twice, and perhaps forgot it later among other interests. I think she'll tell you when she remembers it. Anyway, if she likes it, she may go there. Alright, but is she not too young to be put to school?
She'll find it interesting, and it is not regular study. She can go and see other children and come home when she likes. I have no objection, but the teacher may have some other system. No, it is a school meant for very small children.
How much of the child do you see? I asked. As much as anyone else, perhaps a little more. I have direct access to her heart now. I am always watching her. Does she see you?
Perhaps she does. Children are keener, sighted by nature. She sees me, and perhaps takes it naturally, since children spontaneously see only the souls of persons. Children see spirit forms so often that it is natural to their condition and state of mind. If she sees you, why doesn't she cry out? It is a natural state to them, and in the depth of their soul they have certain reservations. Perhaps she doesn't speak out as much as she would like because she observes and understands the reserve you are all exercising in her presence about me. She merely saves your feelings by not speaking of me. You must have observed how little she refers to me. Did you think that it was out of forgetfulness? And don't you agree that there is a certain peace about her, which elders lack, although I was no less important to her than to anyone else?
Nowadays I went about my work with a light heart. I felt as if a dead load had been lifted. The day seemed full of possibilities of surprise and joy. At home I devoted myself to my studies more energetically. The sense of futility was leaving me. I attended to my work earnestly. All the morning I sat preparing my day's lectures. My little daughter watched me curiously. "Father is reading," she exclaimed. She drew a chair close to mine and sat up with a book, with any book that caught her fancy, till she saw a squirrel or a sparrow alighting on the roof of the opposite house, and exclaimed, "Father, the sparrow is come." Do they also read? Do they also go to school? "Little girl, just go out near the gate and ask," I said, with the idea of getting on with my work. Once she had gone out, she slowly got interested in something or other and forgot to come back. When she mentioned school, I pricked up my ears and was on the point of asking her a question, but I restrained myself, because I wanted to watch if the answer would come from her first or from the old lady. That very evening I heard the subject mentioned. When I returned home, the child was out. There was only the old lady in the kitchen. I asked, "Where is Leela?" "Oh, she has gone to the school," the old lady replied.
Which school? I asked with faint ignorance. That baby's school, in the next street. I took her there once or twice in the afternoon, because she liked to see the other children, and they all like her very much there. Today the teacher said he would bring her back in the evening. She wouldn't come away either, because she is making some animals and other things with clay. They have also given her scissors and colored paper to cut. She is so happy. Why didn't you tell me before that you had taken her there?
I took her out on 2 days just for a few minutes. When the child in the next house came home in the afternoon and went back to school, Leela also went with her one day, she said, and added, "Poor thing, it was some way of engaging her mind and keeping her from longing for her mother." The child came home half an hour later. Her teacher left her at the gate and went away. "Father," she screamed at the gate, "I've been to school like you." I went out and picked her up in my arms. The teacher had moved off a few yards. "Is that your teacher?" I asked.
Yes. Call him, I said. At which she shouted, Schoolmaster, and the teacher turned back. Come back and speak to my father. You are the headmaster of the school? I asked.
Yes. Is there any class to which this girl can be admitted? Oh, yes. She will be happy. We shall be very glad to admit her.
Any long hours? I asked. Oh, no, she can come any time and go away when she likes. No restrictions. Please send her. She will be happy with us. May I know your name?
Just headmaster will do, he said. The child was dancing with joy. She was full of descriptions of her school. Father, do you know I have made a clay brinjal? The teacher said it was nice. All right, I said, and sat by her side and made her take some tiffin which the old lady had prepared. She was too excited to relish anything. I coaxed her to eat, and then took her to the bathroom. Her face was streaked with the clay she had been handling. I soaked a towel in water and rubbed her cheeks till they glowed. And then I sent her in to the old lady and had her hair combed. I took her out on her usual walk. I took her through the busy thoroughfare of Market Road. She loved the bustle of Market Road and kept asking questions, and I found her view of life enchanting. I bought her some sweets at the stores. She mainly talked about her school. Father, at our school, I have a friend. You know her father gives her lots of sweets every day. Why do you always give me only one or two?
Children must not eat more than 2 at a time, I replied. She is a good girl, always plays with me at school, the child said. Shall I also grow tall when I go to school? Yes, certainly.
Why do you go to that far off school and not to our school, father? She said. She saw some villagers moving about with turbans on their heads. She asked, do they wear those things on their heads, even when they sleep? I don't know what idea crossed her mind at such times. I took her to the river bank. She ran about on the sand. She watched the other children playing. She whispered, that girl is in our school. What is her name? Kamla, she said.
Is she your friend? She is a very good girl. Go and play with her if you like. The girl was playing with another group around a circle on the sand. At my suggestion, Leela blinked and said with great seriousness, she will be very angry if I ask to be taken also.
Call her, let me see, I said. Kamla, Kamla, she called faintly, and then added, that is her school name, she doesn't like to be called so when she is not in school. We passed on. She stood near other girls also and pointed them out to me as her school friends, but she would not go near anyone or call aloud. She seemed to identify her friends in a general way, whatever might be their names and their schools. As far as she was concerned, they were all her friends and schoolmates. She was endowing each of them with any character she chose. Next morning there was great activity. She was to be put to school. I was as excited as if I myself were to be put to school. I did little work at my table that day. I ran about the house in great excitement. I opened her trunk and picked out a shirt and skirt, fresh ones, printed cotton. When she saw them, my daughter put them back and insisted upon wearing something in lace and silk. Baby, you must not go to school wearing laced clothes. Have you ever seen me going with any lace on?
It's because you have no lace skirts, that is all, she said. No, father, I want that for school. Otherwise they will not allow me in. She threw her clothes about and picked up a deep green, with a resplendent lace 3 inches wide, and a red skirt studded with stars. The whole thing was too gorgeous for a school. Her mother had selected them for her on a birthday, at the Bombay Cloth Emporium. 2 evenings before the birthday we had gone there, and after an hour's search she picked up these bits for the child, who was delighted with the selection. I protested against it and was told, gaudy. There is nothing gaudy where children are concerned, particularly if they are girls. Whom are these for if they are not meant to be worn by children? Go on, I said cynically. Buy yourself 2 of the same pattern if you are so fond of it. But the cynicism was lost on her. She disarmed me by taking it literally and said, "No, no. I don't think they weave saris of this pattern. Do they?" she asked, turning to the shopman.
The child was excessively fond of this piece and on every occasion attempted to wear it. Today she was so adamant that I had to yield to her. She tried to wear them immediately, but I said, "After your hair is combed and you have bathed." And now as I put her clothes back in the box, she grew very impatient and demanded, "Bathe me, father, bathe me, father." I turned her over to the old lady's care and arranged the box, carefully folded and kept away her clothes. She had over 40 skirts and shirts. Her mother believed in stitching clothes for her whenever she had no other work to do, and all the child's grandparents and uncles and aunts constantly sent her silk pieces and clothes ever since the day she was born. The result was she had accumulated an unmanageable quantity of costly clothes, and it was one of my important occupations in life to keep count of them. She was ready, dressed in a regalia, and stood before me, a miniature version of her mother. "Let us go," she said, and for a moment I was unaware whether the mother or the daughter was speaking the turn of the head and lips. "I must carry books," she insisted.
"No, no, not today. My teacher will be angry if I don't take my books," she said, and picked up her usual catalogue. She clasped it to her little bosom, and walked out with me, bubbling with anticipation and joy. The school was in the next street. A small compound and a few trees and a small brick, red building. The noise those children made reached me as I turned the street. The schoolmaster received us at the gate. As soon as we entered the gate, a few other children surrounded Leela and took her away. She left me without a thought. She behaved as if she had been in that school for years and years.
The headmaster was in raptures over the new arrival. He said, "Won't you come and have a look round?" He had partitioned the main hall into a number of rooms. The partition screens could all be seen, filled with glittering alphabets and pictures drawn by children. A look at it seemed to explain the created universe. You could find everything you wanted: men, trees, and animals, skies and rivers. "All these work of our children," he explained proudly. "Wonderful creatures. It is wonderful how much they can see and do. I tell you, sir, live in their midst and you will want nothing else in life." He took me round. In that narrow space he had crammed every conceivable plaything for children: saws, swings, sand heaps and ladders. "These are the classrooms," he said. "Not for them. For us elders to learn. Just watch them for a while." They were digging into the sand, running up the ladder, swinging, sliding down slopes, all so happy. This is the meaning of the word joy in its purest sense. We can learn a great deal watching them and playing with them. When we are qualified, we can enter their life, he said. The place was dotted with the colored dresses of these children, bundles of joy and play. When I watch them, I get a glimpse of some purpose in existence and creation. He struck me as an extraordinary man.
If they are always playing, when do they study? Just as they play, I gather them together and talk to them and take them in and show them writing on boards. They learn more that way. Everybody speaks of the game, way in studies, but nobody really practices it. It becomes more the subject of a paper in some pompous conference and brings a title or preferment to the educational administrator. Oh, don't allow me to speak too much on this subject, as you will find me a terrible bore. He was a slight man, who looked scraggy. Evidently he didn't care for himself sufficiently. His hair fell on his nape, not because he wanted it to grow that way, but, I was sure, because he neglected to get it cut. His coat was frayed and unpressed. I liked him immensely. I was sure there were many things about him which would fascinate me. I was seized with a desire to know more of him. I asked him, "Please visit me someday." "I will certainly drop in one day when I take a holiday." You see, I hate holidays. It is 10 or 15 years since I began this work, and I have not felt the need for a holiday at all. Holidays bore me. And I spend even my Sundays here looking about. This is a nice place. There is a garden too, entirely made by children. He took me through a bamboo stile to a small plot with tiny lots. He was continually enthusiastic. Does he ever sleep? I asked myself. Come to my house on a Sunday instead of coming here, I said, and he agreed. I had a feeling that I was about to make a profound contact in life.
The next sitting was a complete disappointment to me. But perhaps my own frame of mind was somewhat to blame. After the first thrill of discovery subsided, I fell into a questioning mood and asked, the moment my friend was ready with the pencil, do you remember the last day we went out together? Yes, I remember. Can you say where we went and a few incidents of the day and so on? I asked.
I remember going out on the last day with you. I feel we visited a temple, bought something for the child, and also visited a painted house. We went out followed by the servant and did a little marketing on the way. Oh, I said. What else do you remember? The pencil paused for a while and then scratched off. We met a scorpion on the way and you nearly put your foot on it. We bought a brass lamp used for worship and a toy engine. Do you remember what happened in the house we visited? I asked.
No, she replied. Absolutely nothing happened? I asked. In answer to it, the helper wrote, the low roof of the kitchen knocked her head, and she is laughing because her husband slipped in the backyard. To be frank, this did not happen. I don't know why she is saying these things, I said.
She promises to do better next time, the helpers wrote. There are some difficulties both in expressing and picking out of memory the exact items. We would advise you to stop now. The lady sends her love and prayers for her husband and child. And they were gone. The hand stopped. Half an hour over, I suppose, said my friend. I rose to go home very unhappily. Except one or two references, the rest was all too wild. I grumbled and went home in a most unhappy state of mind. To be in this state till next Wednesday. But a week passed. I was back there on the following Wednesday. Meanwhile, I had scrutinized the pages again and again, and came to the conclusion that after all they were not wild. Each detail was correct: temple, painted house, buying for the child and the lambs. Every time she went to her parents, she purchased brass lamps and knick-knacks for someone or other. A toy engine was bought on the last day for the child. As for knocking her head against the kitchen roof, she was rather tall for her age and was very proud of the fact that most doorways were too short for her and that they knocked her on the head, and she always spoke about it. I could not recollect when I had slipped in the backyard, but otherwise each individual item seemed to be after all correct, though chronologically mixed up in utter confusion. I mentioned it to my friend when I met him next and his explanation seemed to be plausible. I will ask you a question now at short notice.
When did you buy the cloth for this shirt? I looked at my blue shirt helplessly. Was it before or after you purchased the coat you are wearing over it? And on your way home from the shop that day, what else did you buy and how much? You see how difficult it is to place these exactly, while you are still living in the midst of these experiences. I can't say, for instance, what exactly I had for dinner this day last week. While chronological order and precision in details are so difficult for us, they must be more so to other beings whose surroundings are timeless and entirely different. If my speculation is right, their vision of things embraces an experience as a whole rather than events in an order. All memories merge and telescope when the time element between them is removed. I think this is the reason for the apparent confusion. Add to this the possibility of their memory being finer and more selective. There may be a natural law operating by which unpleasant memories and impressions are filtered and left behind with the physical body. If you take all this into consideration, you may view their inaccuracies more charitably. At every sitting she urged me on to look for her sandalwood casket and the 14 letters. I couldn't search very thoroughly because I found it impossible to enter the room and open her trunks. On a holiday afternoon I steeled myself to it. I opened the door and felt a pang at heart when I cast a look around at her trunks, her clothes and possessions. For all of us, our possessions turn to mementos. Is there anyone in the whole world who can say his lot is different? I reflected, as I sat down amidst her trunks. My daughter was thrilled to see me there, and cancelled an appointment she had with her friend and joined me in my search. I opened Sushila's yellow trunk, in which she kept all kinds of toilet sets she had acquired in her lifetime. 3 or 4 different colored vulcanite cases with mirrors and small bottles. She used to be very fond of these boxes and asked for one whenever she saw them in the shop, green, orange, red, of all colors. I took them out one by one. And then all kinds of cardboard boxes and fancy tin containers stuffed with embroidery thread and woolen bits.
The small sweater in yellow, she had been reading about knitting and had become suddenly very enthusiastic. She behaved like a child in her enthusiasm. Every day as I left for college, she gave me a commission for a purchase on my way back. It was rarely I was able to pick up the correct color that she wanted, and I had the task of exchanging it for the correct shade next evening. Finally, exasperated, I arbitrarily forced her to begin work on the yellow sweater for me. She sat down on the veranda step and plied her needles by the evening light, refusing to go out on a walk or do anything else. Night and day she thought and spoke of nothing else. At the end of the day, the 2 shining needles were stuck into the ball and kept on a shelf in the hall. I made all kinds of jokes about it, saying that the sweater seemed to be promised for my 100th birthday and so on. The back of the sweater was nearly ready and she looked triumphant. The ball of wool was satisfactorily going down in bulk. She proclaimed that the complete sweater would be on my back in 8 days, and then our child caught a cold, and she lost all peace of mind and could not knit. Thereafter one thing and another intervened and she never took it up again at all. In that condition it was still lying in the box, with the yellow back ready, the needles stuck, as they were on the day, into the ball of wool. "What is this, father?" the child asked, picking it up. I shook my head and said, "Put it away, girl, you may hurt yourself with the needles." And then there were fancy borders meant to be stitched into some dress.
I had always protested against the purchase of these things, and she always waved my protest away with, "You just see how they look when they are stitched into my jackets and the baby's frocks. You will yourself ransack all the shops for more of them." But they were still where they had been put the day she bought them. This box contained a couple of fancy lacquer caskets of Burmese origin, which her sister from Rangoon had sent. They were filled with small bottles of scent, which I had given her during the first 2 years of our married life. I opened their corks one by one and smelled them. Their delicate perfume brought immediately around me other days. Evenings when we went out, and spoke of nothing in particular, first years of married life when I used to be very vehement about my plans for the future. These tiny files had compressed in them the essence of her personality, the rustle of her dress, her footfalls, laughter, her voice, and the light in her eyes, the perfume of her presence. The bottles were empty now, but the lingering scent in them covered for a brief moment the gulf between the present and the past. I shut my eyes and dwelt in that ecstasy. I reflected, of all the senses, it is smell which is the subtlest. It takes you back to the core of your experience. Why have they not studied its laws and processes, while they have studied all the other senses? Do these scents mean anything to her in her present state?
"What are you smelling, father?" asked the child and brought me back to the earth. "Why are you closing your eyes, father?" I drew down the lid. There was no trace of the 14 letters and the sandalwood casket. I opened another trunk in which she had kept her clothes, dozens of saris and 101 jackets of all colors and shades, and above all else that glittering gold, woven purple sari, in which she was presented to me as a bride on the all-important day. Many of these clothes had not been taken out more than once because she had a dread of spoiling their sheen. She picked up like a child every soap, box, carton and empty container and preserved them in her cupboard and put into them coins and knick-knacks. In a cardboard box I found stuffed a few sheets of paper. I pulled them out. They were embroidery designs copied in pencil, and some recipe for a tooth powder. There was a sheet on which she had even begun a story with childlike simplicity of two brothers, woodcutters, one of whom was good and industrious and the other was lazy and bad.
There were my corrections in between the lines. I remembered how on a certain day she sat for hours at my table stroking her lips with the pencil, lost in thought. I do not know what made her want to write a story at all. But she was filled with shame when I found her out, and was so nervous when I read through it and corrected the grammar. She never proceeded beyond the first page of the story, where the brothers differ and separate. This seemed to me a precious document now crumpled and stuffed into the box. I carefully smoothed it out, and took it with me to my own table. The child sat very quietly watching me and derived a great deal of pleasure in arranging the empty tins side by side. There was still powder in one of the tins, 3/4 full, bought a month before she fell ill. I opened the lid and smelt it. "You are once again shutting your eyes," remarked my daughter. At the next meeting, the moment my friend was ready with the pencil, she asked, "Do you know what a wonderful perfume I have put on? I wish you could smell it. On second thoughts, I had better not mention it because you will want to smell it and feel disappointed. Perhaps it may look like selfishness for me to be so happy here when there you are so sorrow-filled and unhappy. It would hardly be right if I produced that impression. If I succeed in making you feel that I am quite happy over here and that you must not be sorry for me, I will be satisfied. Your sorrow hurts us. I hope our joy and happiness will please and soothe you."
"Undoubtedly," I replied. "But what makes you mention the perfume?" I asked. "Just to enable you to have the most complete idea of our state of existence, that is all. Moreover, did you not speculate somewhat on those lines a few days ago? How do you spend your time usually?" I asked.
"Time in your sense does not exist for us," she replied. "Our life is one of thought and experience. Thought is something which has solidity and power, and as in all existence, ours is also a life of aspiration, striving, and joy. A considerable portion of our state is taken up in meditation, and our greatest ecstasy is in feeling the divine light flooding us. We've ample leisure. We are not constrained to spend it in any particular manner. We have no need for exercise as we have no physical bodies. Music is ever with us here, and it transports us to higher planes. Things here are far more intense than on earth. That means our efforts are far more efficient than yours. If by good fortune we are able to establish a contact with our dear ones who are receptive to our influence, then you say that that person is inspired. And a song or melody can establish a link between our minds. For instance, how sad that you should have neglected your veena. If you could take it up once again, our minds could more easily join. Why don't you try it?" It was years since I had put it away. I had a gift for it when I was young. I don't know scientific music. I have been after all a self-taught amateur.
"Do not worry what anyone will think of your veena. For me it will be the most welcome music. I promise that you will feel my presence as you have never felt it yet. It will surely make your heart easier. You might have thought I did not very much care for music when on earth, but as a matter of fact I was really intensely interested in it," she said. I remembered how quietly she liked music. She never took great pains to learn it, although she could sing well. She could never be persuaded to sing, but sometimes unaware of my watching, she would sing to herself while combing her hair or putting the child to sleep. If I showed any signs of listening, she would stop. She always listened to music wherever it came from, a gramophone in a house on the way, or a beggar singing. She listened with a silent rapture. "You think I have become a very learned sort of person and all that kind of stuff?"
"Yes," I replied. Ever since these communications began, I felt, now and then, that she showed a greater wisdom than I had known her to possess. You would much rather that I was the same prattling person I was on earth, but let me tell you that the change that takes place when one comes over here is so great and the vision is so clear that even I, your wife, whose nonsense pleased you so much more, am changed. I'm essentially the same person as far as you and my dear ones are concerned, but the only difference is that I'm without the encumbrance of the physical body and everything is finer and quicker than on earth. Between thought and fulfillment there is no interval. Thought is fulfillment, motion and everything. That is the main difference between our physical state and yours. In your state, a thought to be realized must always be followed by effort directed towards conquering obstructions and inertia that is the nature of the material world. But in our condition no such obstruction exists. When I think of you or you of me, I am at your side. Music directly transports us. When I think of a garment, it is on me. In our world there is such a fine response for thought. When I come to you, I prepare myself every time as befits the occasion. I come to meet my Lord and I dress myself as befits the occasion. I think of the subtlest perfume and it already pervades my being, and I think of the garment that will most please you, the wedding sari, shimmering purple woven with gold, I have on me at this very moment. You think you saw it in that trunk, how can it be here? What you have seen is its counterpart, the real part of the thing is that which is in thought, and it can never be lost or destroyed or put away.
Thereafter she mentioned at the close of every evening her appearance. Have no shadow of doubt that I am here. I am wearing a pale orange dress with a clasp of brilliants to hold it in position. What a gorgeous dress! I exclaimed. If only you saw the color you would not say how gorgeous, you would be speechless. Not even the colors of sunset give you such tints as we have here. To call it pale orange is to give you an idea as inadequate as the idea which a child forms when.
I cast a look around. She at once said, "You look round. I can see you. What a pity you can't see me. Someday let us hope you will see my form. I am at the moment sitting to your left on the floor with my arm resting on your lap, and directing your friend's hand by my thought." I looked down at my lap. No use yet, even if you open your eyes so wide. But by and by, you will hear my bangles clanking and feast your eyes on my dress and form. I think I look the same person as on earth. Only free from all ailments, ills, and cares. You remember I used to have a sort of pain at the waist, even that I do not have now. My dress tonight is a shimmering blue interwoven with light and stars. I have done my hair parted on the left. And what a load of jasmine and other rare flowers I've in my hair for your sake. I wish a painter could sense me and do a picture for you.
Rest assured that I shall always sit in the same place whenever I am here. When you lift your arm, you touch me. At the close of this evening when you go home, I will accompany you, stay up with you till you go to bed and fall asleep thinking of me. If you want any evidence of my presence, pluck about 10 jasmine buds and keep them near your pillow tonight. Before I go away, I will take their scent with me. That I can do. You will see the difference when you smell the flowers in the morning. On my way home, through the dark night, across Nalapa's grove, my feet felt lighter, because I knew she was accompanying me. Her presence was unmistakably there. I could sense it. The darkness of the night was not felt by me. The distance and loneliness were nothing to me. She was with me. I quietly enjoyed the fact without stirring the slightest thought. Far off, I saw the dark night lit with the fire of a cremation. But it did not disturb me.